you're exhausted by 10 a.m. and you can't figure out why, I'm about to show you the hidden energy drain that has been likely sabotaging your days. So, research shows that it takes an average, wait for it, of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully regain your focus after switching contexts. And the reality is, most women are doing this dozens of times a day without even realizing it. Now, that statistic came from research that was done at the University of California, Irvine. So, again, think about that 23 minutes and 15 seconds to be able to fully regain your focus after switching contexts. So, today I want to break down what does it mean, context switching? And then, most importantly, what can we do to minimize this? So, a lot of people get context switching wrong. They think that context switching is the same thing as multitasking or the same thing as being interrupted. And those are actually three different things. All right. So, multitasking is when you are doing two things at the same time. You're talking to someone while trying to write an email, or maybe you're listening to an audiobook while you're going for a walk. All right. That's multitasking. Being interrupted is when you're in the middle of doing something and then somebody or something happens, your phone rings, a family member walks in your room, whatever, and interrupts what you're doing. Context switching is something completely different. I want you to, for a minute, think about what are all the different roles that you play in your day to day life. All right. So when I think about mine, I am the CEO of a company, right? So I play a CEO role. I'm also a mom. So I play mom role. I'm also a wife. I'm also a daughter. I'm also a sister. I'm also a personal Uber driver to said daughter. I'm also the meal prep and planner. I carry the role I call COO of the household, right? And everybody experiences this where there are a lot of different roles that you play. Well, context switching is when you are jumping into a task where you're in one role or one frame of mind, and then you step out and you go and jump into another role or another frame of mind. For example, I could be sitting at my desk doing a bunch of work for the pink bee. And then I intentionally stop what I'm doing and say, oh, okay, I'm done with this, task that I'm working on right now. Now I'm going to get up and go take care of my dogs for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to come back to my desk and try and get back into CEO role. That's an example of context switching. I went from CEO to dog mom back to CEO. I wasn't interrupted. I wasn't like stopped in the middle of my task. I switched contexts and then came back. That's one very basic example. Now, most women, especially if you are in a caregiving capacity, are doing this all throughout the day. All right. So notice I'm not interrupted. I wasn't multitasking. I wasn't not able to finish the task at hand, but I was switching contexts. And we do this a lot. And so back to the example I gave, if I'm working at my desk and I'm being the CEO, and then I finish and now it's time I need to go take care of the dogs, and then I come back to my desk to get back into CEO role, and that research is showing it's going to take me an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get fully back into the mental state of CEO. Think about this in your own life. Let's say you are a mom like I am, or in any kind of caregiving capacity, right? We can't just flip that switch off. I may be doing something when I'm in my mom role, and then I'm switching gears to go do something else, but I'm still maybe rethinking the conversation, thinking about what my next steps may be, right? It takes a while to fully transition from one context to another. This context switching is a complete energy drain for you. And I was recently even having a conversation with a student that has been through the top program who was like, hey, I am crushing getting the stuff done all week. My weekly planning is going great. I'm doing it all. I'm not cramming too much in, but I can't figure out why I'm so exhausted. And so when we went through her weekly plan, I was like, I see what it is. You are context switching like every hour all day long. So even though the math was working on her calendar, meaning she wasn't overcommitting or overplanning or overscheduling herself, every switch was not just a task change, but a context change. And this is why she was so exhausted. I even think about that in my own life. I can have days where I do 4 or 5 hours of really, really solid work where I am in one context, where I am in CEO mode, and I can finish that and still feel really energized. I can have other days where I may only get an hour and a half of CEO work spread in between switching contexts so that maybe I only got 30 minutes and then I had to switch context 2 more times, then come back, and I'm tapped out after 5 hours, right? It wasn't the workload, it was the context switching that was completely draining me. There was another fascinating statistic that came out recently from Lazian that said people who context switch experience a 40% decrease in productivity compared to those who don't, right? 40% decrease, which would explain why I can get more work done and be totally energized when I'm not context switching as opposed to the opposite. Now, one more statistic I want to share that I thought was really, really interesting is it says that people will often switch activities, switch contexts on their own, sometimes every 3 minutes. That's astounding. So, how do we fix this problem? Well, this is where really good planning comes into play. If you aren't doing good weekly planning, you are likely never going to protect yourself from this constant context switching. And this is one of the things that I teach inside of the top program as well when you are learning weekly planning mastery. What we need to do, what everyone needs to learn how to do, is when you are assessing everything competing for your time for the day and then creating a plan of attack of what you're doing and when, you need to also look at it through the lens of how do I minimize my context switching? So instead of saying I'm going to do this thing in context A at 9 a.m. and then this second thing in that same context at 1 p.m., how can I create a plan where I can stay in that one context and get as many of the tasks and activities in there as possible before I switch gears and move into my next context? So on what I call my normal work days, which happen Monday through Friday, as long as school is in session, I really work to only do real context switching a couple of times. I can't avoid it with the way the reality my life shakes down. So when I sit down at my desk to go into CEO mode, I typically have a plan in place that allows me to stay in work context for 90 minutes to 2 hours before I take a break. I do have dogs that I have to go walk. When I come back from that is when I will usually go ahead and prep what I'm going to be eating later in that day for lunch or snack and have it ready to go so that when I come back, I can actually come back into CEO mode again until it's ready for school pickup time. So my goal is to try and only have one context switch during my core working hours. Some days I have to have two, it depends. Now, again, notice I'm saying I'm still doing different activities, right? I might be recording a podcast, I might be recording a YouTube video, I might be working on creative content, but I'm in one context. So a lot of people confuse that by saying, "Oh, I'm jumping from thing to thing to thing," but if you are in one context, you are still going to be able to stay far more productive than if you are doing a ton of other context switching. So, fun exercise for yourself is tomorrow. Grab a little sticky note or something and make a little tick mark every single time you context switch throughout the day. And if you notice a lot of tick marks and you notice you're exhausted, this is likely the root cause.